Ha, I think we're there. We are live. The Rebel Roundtable on Friday mornings is my favorite time of the week. So I'm Jen Lee, aka Rebel Esquire, and today I have my favorite productivity hack in the world on here talking about lawyers being productive. But I have Sarah Tetlow today, and Sarah is a productivity strategist consultant. She is an international speaker, and she helps attorneys and legal professionals with productivity. And yes, we can be productive. So, Sarah, thank you for being here this morning.
I am thrilled to be with you, and I've seen you twice this week, which is great. So nice to see you
I
again,
know.
Jen.
We don't see each other for months, and then all of a sudden, twice in 1 week, we get to see each other. So,
Right?
very cool.
Yeah.
Uh, so, Phil, tell me a little bit about. I know your firm focus is your company name, but tell me a little bit about your background and what firm focus does.
Yeah. Okay. So I always wanted to be a lawyer. My whole life, I wanted to be a lawyer. I was that kid that, like, very clearly second grade. I'll speed up this background. I'm not going to be like, and then in third grade, and then in fourth grade, that would be like, this person's super not productive. She just is boring. But fast forward, I did take that route. My background was a BA in law and society, and I ended up working in law firms for 15 years. I never did become an attorney, but I was a litigation paralegal, and they say that they do everything that attorneys do except for the things that only attorneys can do, which is basically arguing in court and signing the documents, signing the pleadings. So definitely pulled some all-nighters, definitely had the billable hour, definitely did a lot of analysis, witness preparation, trial preparation. I have a great story for another time about a class action where I found a mistake that was massive and opened up a huge can of worms for one of our clients. So anyway, I won't again bore about that today, but ask me about it sometime if you're ever interested. And in 2016, the law firm I worked for, I kind of called it, they pulled the rug out from under me, and not necessarily in a pejorative way, but they basically were like, hey, we need a new manager for marketing and BD, business development. You
Mhm.
seem super outgoing, and why don't you do that instead?
That's the only skill needed for those things, right? Super outgoing.
Exactly. I mean, that's exactly what I thought. I was like, I don't know the damnedest thing about marketing and business development. I'm a paralegal. I come in, I work my ass off, I work hard, and then I go home. I'm very analytical. So anyway, I'll speed up from here. I did that for about 2 years. There were things about it I really, really loved, and I basically built that department. And I'm someone that takes initiative a lot, and I'm very driven. And that role was left dormant for so long that I was getting really creative. I was learning everything I could about marketing and business development from the Legal Marketing Association. But I also, behind the scenes, was kind of scratching my head saying, I'm missing a lot about my old role.
Right.
And so that led to marrying the things I really were passionate about in the productivity, or excuse me, in the paralegal side, the things I liked in the marketing and BD side.
Mhm.
And I came up with firm focus and wanting to really help attorneys with time management challenges, project management, task management, time management, attention management, and ultimately email management, which was a large part of what I did as a paralegal, is helping to manage the attorneys, keep them organized, keep them um, on track for deadlines. And that's what we do at Firm Focus. So we just do productivity, time management, organization, and a spinoff on that is email management is a big thing
Mhm.
that a lot of our clients kept saying, but what about email? I'll be quiet in 1 minute. The last thing is, or in a minute, our offerings are coaching, one-on-one or very small team coaching. Um, a lot of speaking and training. So I'll come in and do presentations for practice groups or firms or mid-level associate retreats or partner retreats, and consulting, but the consulting is usually limited to like the email management or learning
Mhm.
Microsoft Planner. So that's our offerings. That's how I got there. Love what I do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's always interesting when someone falls into something almost like you get
Yeah.
geared towards things and you realize, oh, I can make this my own, and here's what I love to do. I feel like productivity is such a buzzword
Yeah.
that people are blowing up there. What is the biggest misconception that lawyers and the legal world has about being productive?
Well, I think one of the mistakes they make is being productive does not always mean increased output of finished work. And a lot of
Okay.
the times, I'll elaborate very briefly on that, but a lot of the time, briefly, sorry. A lot of the times it's like being more productive doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get three times, two times, 10 times more done in a day, but it does mean that they will get the right things done in the day. They're in many situations, their billable hours will increase because the multitasking that often they are doing is not serving them with the billable hour. They are
Wait,
leaking
wait, wait. We're not
time.
supposed to multitask? What?
We are not supposed to multitask. No, 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 no. So being productive, though, is being clear on what you need to do, staying focused, taking that break in the middle of the day. That can do wonders to your productivity. Sometimes being productive might mean that you're actually producing less in a day. But again, I'm a big believer and I've seen it with my clients. That doesn't mean less billable hours. It actually means often increased billable hours because of the new habits of billing contemporaneously, staying on task up until the point of completion or up until the point of which you are at a good stopping point, whether that's because, okay, now I need to delegate out the next step, or I need to jump on a meeting, so I have to stop it right now. But instead of that multitasking that no, we're not supposed to do, Jen.
Okay, so you said an evil word in there that I heard,
Uh-huh.
called billing contemporaneously.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that firms and all kinds of people, even if they're not billable hours, because I hate billable hours. I don't think that they should exist. But everyone needs to track what they're doing
Mm-hmm.
for efficiency and productivity purposes and pricing, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any good advice or tips or tricks on the contemporaneous billing? Because that's the number one thing I hear from lawyers is that contemporaneous billing challenge.
Yeah. Yes, so much to unpack there. So I'm kind of thinking it into three sort of buckets. The
Yeah.
bucket one is, which you touched on, is um, getting away from the billable hour, which alternative fee arrangements or whatever that might be. So I'm not going to dive deeper into that area, but that is something that obviously would be an overall goal if we could get there, would be fantastic. I realize to get there, we have to create the history, accurate data and history to know how to price going forward. So let's put that one aside and deal
Okay.
with where most of the attorneys who are probably listening are sitting, where they maybe don't have a lot of control in deciding to go that route, and or they're just not prepared to go that route, in which case they are still needing to track what they do and bill that time.
Mhm.
Um, Doing so contemporaneously, I think I get like my heart gets really heavy because so many attorneys don't do it contemporaneously, and it pains me because they are the really the only ones missing out on this, especially if at the end of the week or at the end of the month, depending on what their firm or
Mhm.
their bookkeeper, accounting internally, if it's a small firm and they have these bad practices, but their accounting person is good about the accountability, but only once a month to say, hey, by the way, did you get all your time in? Because it looks really low. Oh, no, I need to sit on Sunday and do it for the next 3 hours. Who the heck wants to go back to February 1st or whatever day and say, what the heck did I do on February 1st? I can't
Right.
tell you what I did yesterday. I can't tell you what I did an hour ago, Jen. And so contemporaneously billing, I think it's a habit that needs to be built, but there's so much value and power that comes with building it. Okay, so now to really answer your question, because I can talk all day about they should do it, and I'm going to be totally candid here. I am still trying to figure out how to like magically tap into everybody and change this habit. In coaching a lot, I can successfully do it with each individual when I kind of get
Mhm.
down to the
Mhm.
root issue of what is their resistance to that habit. But just to talk more broadly here, I think a lot of it is attorneys are just and because of the pressure too of how many billable hours, and they're just wanting to just move on to the next thing. Okay.
Mhm.
So it's
Yep.
like, okay, don't track my time right now. I just sent that email and now I'm going to pick up this next thing. Or they're multitasking, right? And then that doesn't serve them either with entering their time. I want them to think of entering their time because you have to do it. We're not going to escape it from this bucket of people that I'm talking about here. I want you to think of it as like bookends to the task. So right now, I think often they think if they are entering their time on any sort of cadence, they think of it as I did the task and then I billed for it, right? And
Mhm.
that would be fine, but I actually want them to think of it as bookends to the task. You start everything you do in your time entry system. I'm about to jump onto this meeting. Now, I build my time for years. I still track my time, Jen, because I
Mhm.
want to know what I'm doing in my business. But I also want to just show to my clients that you really can make it a habit that's like pretty effortless.
Right.
Everything I do starts in the timer. Now, the description, I may not know exactly how to describe it yet because I don't yet know exactly what it is I'm going to do. But even just a little hint or a little breadcrumb, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm about to assess this draft pleading from the associate. Okay.
Okay. Mhm.
And then you do the task. And then at the end of the task, you're bookending it again. You're going back to your timekeeping system. Ideally, the timers, every timekeeping system has timers.
Right.
But if you don't use the timers or yours for some reason doesn't have it, you can still do it the manual entryway. But you go
Right.
back to your timekeeping system and you check in the draft. There's different terminology. Usually most software has, you can keep it as a draft version before you submit it to accounting and lock it down.
Right.
So think of it as bookends, or another way I like to think of it is like wrapping a gift. You have this gift you're going to give to your friend, and it's this beautiful gift. That's the task you're going to be working on. Well, to wrap that beautiful sweater you're going to give to your friend, you first need an empty box. Then you put the beautiful sweater in the empty box, and then you wrap it and tie it with a bow. And so our timekeeping habits should be the empty box and the wrapping it up with the bow. And the thing you're doing is that beautiful sweater that you're putting inside. Okay, that third bucket, this is super quick. The third bucket is I'm still talking about like a lot of manual. This is still, the habit, which I think the majority of people, this is where they fall, what I just talked about, where they have
Right.
to still do it manually. The
Yeah.
third bucket is software out there, such as Smokeball, Filevine. A lot of them can integrate with Microsoft and track what
Okay.
you're doing. Not my area of expertise, and so I'm not going to dive too much into it. Plus, I think most people fall into that middle bucket. So not
I
all
agree.
the arrangements and not integrate it with software that tracks everything they're doing. But that middle one is really about changing your behavior and entering it
Mhm.
contemporaneously. Okay, so that's what I had to say about that.
Well, no, I do like what you're saying about, I never thought of it that way, as far as the bookends. And then that actually makes sense in my weird brain. I'm like, okay, I'm going to start this task and I'm not going to do other things in the middle of this task. I'm just going to do this one task.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that
And,
makes sense.
and Jen, just to elaborate on this, this actually does help with the multitasking because once you've built this habit,
Yeah.
which I have this habit down, I'll go to do something different and I'll start in my timer because that's my habit. And I will
Yeah.
see that I've been doing this task for like a minute and 30 seconds. And
Hmm.
and it'll stop me from multitasking because I'll be like, Sarah, you're being ridiculous. You're literally bored already after a minute and a half. No, no, no. You're going to stay on this task. And then when it's done, you'll go back and tie a bow on that present. So it does actually, they work together very beautifully.
I can
Yeah.
see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are so many directions we could go with this conversation because there's
Mhm.
the other things I had on my list to potentially talk about were like prioritization, like our to-do lists. And you mentioned Microsoft Planner, which is a good tool, but it seems like our to-do lists are crazy. Do you have any feedback on prioritizing things?
Oh my God. I love this question. Nothing I can answer is like just super simple. So hopefully
Right.
everyone's following along. I try to bring in a lot of metaphors and visuals. Okay. It's a good thing you have a lot to do, right? Especially if they own their own business or they're
Hmm.
concerned about like you don't want to be a lawyer who is or working in law or any industry for that matter. I think even a barista at a coffee shop, if they have no one coming in the door, they're like, this is terrible. So having a lot to do, I don't think is a bad thing. I think the difference is any to-do list, whether it's pen and paper, whether it's time blocking on your calendar, or using software like Monday, Asana, Microsoft Planner, GQs, there's a whole bunch of tools on the market. Think of it like a parking lot. Okay. So I like to, here's my visual here.
Mhm.
Jen, have you ever gone to Costco on a Saturday at noon?
I try not to, but yes.
Sometimes we can't help it, right? So let's imagine for a moment you and I are going to Costco on a Saturday at noon, which the parking lot itself is just insane, right? Like even I found my like perfect spot way at the end where I can reduce my stress, but now everyone else has figured out that secret. And so even that's blown. Okay. So we go to Costco Saturday at noon. We pull up together in the same car. Parking lot is insane. And you're like, you know what, Sarah? I just have to run in and get a platter and a bottle of champagne for this party we're going to go to. Why don't you drive around and I'll run in? And so you go in the store. I drive around, I find a spot, I get out of the car, I walk to the front of Costco. You come out of Costco. I'm getting somewhere with this. We're getting back to our task list.
Okay. Yes.
You come out of Costco, you're carrying this platter, and I grab the champagne
Champagne.
from you and
Yeah.
help you. And you're like, oh, great. Thank you so much for doing that. Where's the car parked? And I say, oh, it's out there in this parking lot. You would be like, okay, I'm
Helpful.
curious.
Really helpful.
Really helpful. Okay, Sarah, where, like, what direction? Well, it would be helpful if I said it's down here to the left, the third aisle, right? Now at least we
Okay.
can narrow it down to this aisle. Then it would be even more helpful if I said it's the fifth car on the right. Okay, so we walk and we get to your car. Your to-do list is like this huge Costco parking lot on a
Mm,
Saturday at noon. The aisle
yes.
you're parked in is the priorities this week, and the spot you're in is what I need to do today. And so prioritizing, and while I'm giving you that visual is really to go from feeling overwhelmed at your parking lot of to-dos to that's normal. That's normal because there's a lot to do. But through some of your habits of being able to prioritize each day, we just want to hone in on what is our parking spot of things to do. And there are a lot of techniques that I work with people on to make sure that you have a behavior to say, okay, here's what's in the week for this week. And then here's my parking spot for today. And I don't need to worry about the rest of the parking lot because it's all teed up to
Right.
um, come into the forefront when I'm ready to work on it, when I need to put my attention on it. And that might mean that, like, let's say this happens. This is what's on my list today. I need to check in with someone. I don't yet need to spend the hour on this project, but I do need to check in with this person. So it's in my parking spot for today, that project to check in with the person. And then I'm going to move that project to next Wednesday is the next day I'm going to touch it. And through these habits, you just really need to focus on your parking spot and a little bit on your parking lane of what's going on this
Right.
week. But through
Right.
these effective systems, the whole parking lot doesn't matter. So that helps with prioritization.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that makes sense because like your brain like goes overwhelmed by all these things because you're
Yeah.
trying to pick 17,000 things to do at once. I'm totally envisioning myself in my own little Trello board here with all these things listed and I can't figure out where to start. So yeah, that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Um, so much, so many good things to think about. Um, I have the other thing that I feel, not just attorneys these days, but professionals in general, is the email inbox.
Mm,
It seems to have gotten completely insane. And I'm trying to find more tools outside of email to communicate on things so that it's not always copying in my inbox all day. But any tips, tricks, what are the things people are doing with their email inboxes to get them under control and actually respond to things they need
yeah.
to be responded to?
Oh my God, we're gonna go there. Okay. Buckle up,
Well,
everybody.
and I know you have a whole system for this, so I
I
just want
do.
like high
High
level.
level. Yeah.
But yeah,
Okay. I'm gonna do my best. High level.
yeah,
I'm gonna actually say one last thing about prioritizing.
yeah,
I'll keep this as quick as I can because I realize I give a lot of that analogy, but people might still be going, right, but then how do I pick what's in my parking spot? Um, you have to recalibrate almost every day. You have to recalibrate. What was a low priority might become a high priority, ideally by choice and not necessarily because you're reacting to a angry client or colleague. Um,
hmm
but you do need to recalibrate often. And when you are faced with two kind of competing priorities, there's only one you. You've got to pick the one that
yeah,
makes the most sense, whether that's the one that's going to unlock bottlenecks for other people or it's the deadline's absolutely today. And if both deadlines are today, what can you do to delegate
yeah,
parts of it, but there's only one you, and so make the decision. I think oftentimes that's the multitasking is they feel as though, well, if I touch this a little and touch this a little and touch this a little and touch this a little, it feels as though I was making progress on both, but
right.
I think common sense tells us that's not the case, and so be
Mm.
decisive, stay on task, and so that's just my other tip on prioritization. Okay,
Yeah,
email.
no,
Oh yeah. All right. So email, let me just give some high level tips. We could spend a whole nother
right.
session conversation on
We
email.
will probably someday. But yes.
Yeah. All right. I'm trying to figure out where I want to go with high level here.
And I
And
think some of it is just like, is there like one habit that you would
mhm.
recommend? Like, let's just start with like one thing. Is there
Oh
one
gosh,
habit?
easy. Delete
Yeah.
more
Okay.
often.
Okay. I
When
love it.
it's the stuff, the junk, you don't need to keep those, they accepted your calendar invite, or they're out of the office, or there's donuts in the kitchen. I don't know that those still happen anymore, but that
Right.
happened, of course, when I worked in firms and you would get the, hey, we brought donuts in on the 10th floor kitchen, go get them. Delete, delete, delete. Do not keep that in your mailbox. Okay. I think I know where I want to go with this high level because I can
Yeah.
go super deep.
Yeah.
Need my metaphors, right? Think your inbox, your email inbox is the exact same thing as your physical mailbox in your home.
Mhm.
It's the same thing. It should be the same thing. And I think everyone's reacting now going, are you kidding? I've got 39,000 emails. I don't have 39,000 pieces of mail in my physical mailbox. But
Yeah.
you could if you had the same habit. So at your home, what you probably do on some regular cadence or at your PO box, whatever it is, you go and you grab the mail. Okay.
Mhm.
And then you take it to some command center. And when I talk about command center, I just mean like we all have habits. There's probably the same place in your home where you're typically standing or sitting and kind of sorting through that stuff, right? Some of it you're immediately throwing in the trash. Some of it you're maybe saying, I got to deal with this later, and you're putting
Mhm.
it somewhere that you put that pile. Everyone's a little bit different. And some of it you're just dealing with right now. You're like, oh, I can open this one up and take a look at it. And oh, I'm going to throw it away now, or I'm going to put it on my refrigerator, or I'm going to put it in my planner or file it in a cabinet. All of these, something happens, right? But what you do is you get it out of the mailbox. And when I talked about the one thing of deleting, let's just start there. If you even just did that in your inbox, because what you wouldn't do is leave all the mail in your inbox, in your mailbox, excuse me, and then even the trash, you wouldn't be like, oh God, I don't want that. I'm just going to leave it in my mailbox. No, 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 you take it out and you throw it away. And so that habit alone can help mitigate. And since we're talking about deleting, if it makes sense, unsubscribe
Mhm.
and set up a rule or a filter, rule Outlook, filter Gmail, that those future emails always go to your trash can because we all know with unsubscribe, it doesn't always work effectively.
Yes.
So I guess what I'm summarizing here, and I feel a little like we could go way deeper into this,
Yes.
Jen, but I'll keep it there. Just try to get rid of the trash at the very least. And then
No, it's good.
one
Yeah.
other thing, because I think a lot of lawyers and professionals in general, it's that idea of they want to see everything, so they want to be CC'd on everything.
Hmm.
That if you feel like you need to be CC'd on everything, I'm not going to right now try to say don't do that because that gets deeper into coaching and
Yep.
building
Yep.
comfort and trust. What I will say though is if you can communicate to your team or whoever is trained to CC you that when they CC you, you will not always see it immediately, and then create a rule or a filter that emails that you're CC'd on go into a separate folder. I call
Yep.
them action folders. You can title them with like an asterisk or a 00 so they hang out at the top of your Gmail or your Outlook,
Hmm.
and check those once a day or once a week, and you can run through them pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Know, however, like what your internal systems are in terms of does that mean you're going to miss a critical email that you were CC'd on? You might need to just take a step back and say, always CC me on everything unless it's something that deserves my attention, or if it's responding to this one client, put me in the to line so that
Yeah.
it overrides it and it's delivered to my inbox. That will help reduce some of that. Like, I feel like I'm juggling 50 million balls in front of me right now. Yeah.
That makes sense. And I like, and the important part of that whole thing is having a team or a system set up that they know what to do with it. And I find that all law firms don't even have that basic system set up
Yeah, yeah.
to
And that's a
recognize that.
lot of
So
what I help with the
yeah.
email system I teach, but hopefully they can kind of visualize what I'm talking about enough to
Mhm.
set up themselves. So,
Yeah. Can you talk real quick as we wrap up here about your ARC email productivity system and course and where people can find that at? Because I think that would be hugely helpful for people watching this.
yes, sadly, the course I did pull down about a year and a
Okay.
half ago, and
Okay.
I do still teach it quite a bit. It's one-on-one white glove with me, so you get me in your inbox and we transform it, or I do team trainings on
Yep.
it. Um,
Okay.
Candidly, I've considered bringing back. I started the art system with workshops with groups of about 12 to 20 people, and then
Mhm.
evolved into the course. The course was
Yeah.
built out. It was live for about 2 years. And then I pulled the course because
Okay.
I found, Jen, that people want the accountability, and a course just didn't serve them.
Doesn't have that.
And
Yeah.
so we're back to you get me. And so
Very
to get
good.
more information on that, they can go to the Firm Focus website, firm-focus.com, reach out to me on the contact form, and we can talk about what the options are to help them with that.
Very cool. I hope a lot of people do this, including myself. Um, okay. So the other thing that I do on Rebel Roundtable is I always ask people what their go-to anthem, what your song is to pump you up, and we add it to a Spotify playlist.
Uh-huh.
So what's your go-to, I need to get pumped up song?
Uh, Sia, Unstoppable.
Cool.
Yeah,
Very
and
good.
I'm not going to sing it because that's the only way I'm going to remember the lyrics. But whenever it comes on, I'm like, oh my God, this is me. This is my day to day. This is how I want to feel every day. Um, so yes,
Okay.
Unstoppable by Sia.
Well, great. I will get that added to the Rebel Roundtable Spotify list, and you
Love
can
it.
find it on Spotify under Rebel Roundtable. And we'll keep our list going. We have all kinds of cool songs out there now that we've all added to it. So thank you for spending 30 minutes of your very
Yeah.
productive time with me. And lawyers, be productive. Stop trying to do everything all at once and figure out how your email inboxes should work. So many more things we can go into. And I think Sarah and I will probably have further discussions. And I have some ideas too that we can work on together. So
Yeah.
thank you. Happy Friday. Happy end of February. I can't believe I'm saying that. And I will see you all next week on the Rebel Roundtable.